You grab the Unity project, you throw in basis. From there, it gets really easy. We have same sort of UI setups where you can just add like a avatar SDK or avatar panel. What is it called? What do we call it? I think it's just avatar. Basis avatar. That's literally what it's called. And it literally is the equivalent of Vrchat's avatar component that you add.
Welcome to Metaverse Degen. I'm Lion. Rapture's currently working with a plumber, so he won't be joining us, but we are here joined by our wonderful guest,
Dulie. I'm a game dev and creator of Basis.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Dulie, for joining us. It's an absolute pleasure and honor to have you here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Oh, well, I'll start with the meat and potatoes of the conversation. What are you most known for? How did you get started? What got you here into VR?
Um, uh, what I'm most known for. Oh, that's a good question. So I did a bunch of things in Vrchat, like VRCon. I optimized the New Year's World that Vrchat did. And as well as that, I've just made a bunch of worlds in here. But these days, I'm more known for Basis and building that out, and that is a open source framework for social VR.
Oh, wow. I have a lot of questions. We'll start with what pulled you into here in VR in the beginning and what led you to some of your first projects here.
What can you?
Sorry. I tend to layer questions, so I
I'm a little bit
apologize
blind.
ahead of time. What?
Yeah. I'm very good at answering one question at a time.
Sorry. I'll ask the first one. What got you into VR?
When I was younger, I was very much into just playing games, behind the desk, getting a little bit fat. And I wanted to do some exercise, and I chose VR because a bunch of people were playing Beat Saber at the time, and I was like, I really want to get into that, and I did. I got really heavily into that. Um, yeah, but then I tried out social VR, and then that was where my heart was. I realized that was uh, a very good thing for me because I'm very rural and there isn't anyone here that has the same passions that I have. So it was a really good way of connecting with a wider audience that understood and got what I like to do.
Oh, so from the beginnings, through your journeys through VR, what led to your beginning projects here in the VR space, may I ask?
So by the time that I got into VR, I was already a game dev. And as soon as a fancy new shiny thing was put in front of me, I was so invested in learning it, understanding how it worked, and building content. It was a whole different ballgame, and I was really excited when I got started to actually build stuff in VR. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I'll ask this question: what got you into game dev? And I want to layer that, but I'll be nice. One question.
Thanks, Lion.
No
A
problem.
little slow today. I'm just quickly. I am missing a tooth, and I've just woken up, so it's I'm a little bit slow. But I won't go into that. So I now I've lost it.
Oh, ask the question again if you want, if that helps.
That would be good.
What got you into game dev?
What got me into game dev? When I was younger, I played a lot of games with my IRL friends, and then over time, I started to realize, hey, you can make games, and you can make games in Unity. So I downloaded that, started learning it, and then by the age of 16, I had my first game dev job online. I was working for Americans during the night and then falling asleep in maths class at school, and that was pretty cool.
Oh, wow. So you were going to school or going to what, high school?
Yeah, yeah. When I was in high school, I dropped a class to do. It wasn't actually for game dev that I dropped. I didn't drop it to do that. I dropped it to help improve my studies, but I kind of just used the time to work on my work at the time, and that worked really well. And then since then, I, I've uh, got better at my trade and have worked on more serious projects to the point where I am at now.
Oh, wow. Cool. Well, thank you for sharing that. It's actually pretty awesome. I'm honestly quite impressed. You were like doing high school and game dev projects at the same time. I'm gonna be honest, I'm impressed.
Yeah,
It must have been hard.
yeah. Look, it was a lot, and it definitely accelerated me. But it also my English is terrible because of it. There's still many things that I can work on that I missed out on. But it has definitely accelerated my career.
Mm. To be fair on the English part, there are a lot of Americans and English speakers who are bad at English too, so don't worry. Oh.
I've met plenty of them.
So I will ask this as well. What have been some of your first projects you've worked on, and have they stuck with you over the years? Do you still treasure them?
The first big project I worked on was Last Epoch, which is a ARPG.
Hmm.
And that was really good. That was where I cut my teeth on not just being a game dev, but also learning how to be social and to not get upset every time I didn't get my way. There was a lot of learning and a lot of maturing that occurred. My skill set as a game dev hasn't changed as much as my ability to communicate with people. That is a much bigger, important thing than your actual ability to do the job. Yeah.
Oh, really? So communications more, you said more important?
More important. Yeah. Being able to say that you don't know or that I need to go find out or I'm wrong. I'm wrong is one that, you need to be able to learn and adapt. Yeah.
Oh, okay. What have been some projects, both VR and in your game dev career, you've been most proud of?
Recently I got to work on Blacktop Hoops, which is a basketball game
Hmm.
in VR. But more recently, than even that recent, is working on Basis, and spending basically all my current to hopefully future just working on that and improving on that.
Oh, well, may I ask, what is Basis and how did that project start? Because I remember hearing something about it from Castle when you talked with him a little while ago. I'm quite interested.
Basis is an open source framework for social VR. The goal is to build something that people can just drop into their Unity project and put their world in, put their avatars in, export it, put it up on like a store, and its own contained social environment. It has the server where you can connect to. It's like a it's like Gary's mod, but the difference is you get to own it. So you own the product. You're just using the code of Basis to do whatever you want, and it's very open because of that. And it's got a hopefully very good future because of that as well.
Oh, wow. I remember you mentioning before coding for it when we met last night, and you showed me a bit of it. What started the project? How much work has gone into it to get it in its state it is now?
I've spent about 10 months now, I believe, working on Basis. And in that time, it's gone from being barely functions and gives you motion sickness to able to have decent conversation in it. As well as getting some of the features in like full body IK. Your full body IK is one of the big ones. Proper voice, Visemes, face tracking, eye tracking, getting all of those core technologies working for the end user.
Oh, wow. So, how much goes into doing things like the IK, full body, and all of those things we here in VRChat enjoy so much? Is it a lot of work to get that stuff working in a platform?
It's potentially easy to get started with it. So like I was able to do a lot really quickly, but then you hit a wall, and that is the wall of progress. As you go further and further, it drops off. And Vrchat have spent 10 years at least on a lot of these core systems, learning, understanding. We've done 9 months. And as you can imagine, to get to where we are in 9 months, it's been extreme, like an extreme learning and applying of my understanding of stuff. I'm always tired. It's a lot of work. Yeah.
I can only imagine. How is your work on Basis different from your other projects, Mask, or the other things you've been doing?
my the big difference is probably the stress level. When
Mm.
I'm working for someone else, the stress is kind of on them to make sure that I'm being managed correctly, the community is being managed correctly, finances are held, are properly being done. And then you get over to what I'm doing, and it's like, oh boy, what I am now, like, so what I'm doing now, and it's just like I have to do everything, and I'm also surviving on donations. So Basis is I work on it full time, and the community essentially put money in every month, and I pray that that's enough to live on. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of stress there. Putting your hand, putting myself in the hands of the community. That is was a big step for me. Yeah.
I can only imagine that being a lot of stress. Uh, what has been motivating you to work on it so much? May I ask, with all the stress and the work you're doing?
Um, VR's in a bit of a stale position right now, where uh, everyone wants to monetize now. We've had the growth phase to some degree. We've had, the corporate coming in. We've had being in mainstream, uh, but it's kind of stolen. It's stale right now. And what I want to do is provide more ways to develop VR. I want to provide more ways of getting yourself into building apps for VR. I want to stop the continuous every few years, let's recreate a bunch of things because they don't exist, because everyone that's done it has, got it behind closed source. My goal is to get it out there and get it into the hands of the creators that want to actually improve this space.
Mm. So I actually have a. Ooh. So what made you want to go down that road for those reasons, like for the staling, and why has that been a motivation for you to build and create Basis?
Um, so my big one is I've built the other platforms with the other companies, and I would complete one or get to a point where I would then leave and I would lose the entire thing. But I'm also a social VR user, so it's like, oh, now I've got to redo it. And I kept redoing it, and then I realized if I'm having this problem, I bet the other people are as well. And I bet there's a need for an open source framework that people can take and make into their own application for social VR, for games. Just having the basics and also some advanced stuff already done for you is kind of major.
I'm sure it is. Has anyone built anything with Basis yet? May I ask?
So right now there are 2 Steam apps, as well as a bunch of projects that are behind closed doors. But the VRU is a good example, what you were talking about before, which is essentially a DJ event on its own app. So the entire app is you being in a DJ event. And the reason that that's really cool is because it's siloed and you can just show up there and it's like, oh, this is a DJ app. But it's built on the basis framework, and that's really cool.
Oh, okay. So, what about VR has enamored you back in the day to build all of these projects, such as Basis, the Worlds Adhere, and want to help b- cr- continue the growth of the space?
Was that the word you used? Was that enabled or was that something else?
Enamored.
Enamored.
Yeah, enamored was the
I
using
believe that's
to
is it
enamored, basically to
push
capture your
forwards.
attention, uh, yeah, heavily engross or and capture your attention.
What was it? That's a good question. Fun fact about me as well. I couldn't read or write until I was in year 6. So programming to me has almost happened, like, it was only a few years later after I picked up English. So I'm still, as much as my career goes in game dev, it's still very much progressing in life. So like
Mm.
English there's a bunch of words that I'm still picking up on. What has enamored me? The big thing was social. When I tried Vrchat for the first time, I gave out a little bit of a cry, and that was legitimately because I met people that were interested in the same things as I am. And VR's also given me many things that, that people potentially don't do in VR. And one of those things is I found my soon-to-be wife in VR chat, and she's moving out to Australia where I live in like 2 months' time, and then we'll start the marriage process. So it's and that's my life partner, and I'm very very thankful for what I've been given with that, and that was thanks to VR chat. Um, and but before all those, the big thing for me was the technology and being able to interact with things, the full VR experience. And what makes it better is the 3 dimensions and being able to move in the 3 dimensions.
Oh, wow. Well, congratulations on finding your life partner here, by the way. I'll say that.
Thank you, thank you. Yep, there's hope for everyone.
Hmm. Well, I wish you both the best and a long, happy life together.
Thank you.
Cool. So once
I hope so too.
once you hopped into VRChat, what were some of the first projects you worked on here, and what were those like for you at the time? Because I remember you just said that meeting people here are interested in the same things you are with game dev. Did that lead to anything?
It's the things I was lacking once I got in here were the social experiences to start off with. So it was mostly just meeting people that liked games and that were into game dev, and that was like a foreign concept to me for a great while. And then after that, I joined prefabs through one of my friends, and prefabs at the time was kind of where you go to for all the information uh, related to VR chat. And so I was there and I made a lot of really good friends and went from there.
Oh, now once you joined prefabs, what kinds of things did you build with prefabs, may I ask?
Yes. Yes, and that's so once I got into prefabs, that's where my development in VR chat and the worlds I created took a big turn. They went from being baby's first VR chat world to like being able to build things that actually got used, like the VRCon project, or I'm trying to remember what the name of it was. I'm not gonna remember that one, but a bunch of projects that actually got used by people, and we're talking like 2018. So my brain's had quite a while to forget a lot of the stuff that I did get up to, but it was a lot. Oh, we also did the Shattered Worlds experience with Castle from the
Oh,
VRU, and that was a zombie survival shooter. So you're essentially going through a map like uh, the Valve game. I forgot what it's called. I forgot what it's
Half-Life
called.
Alex? Half-Life?
Left 4 Dead. Left 4
Oh,
Dead.
Left 4 Dead.
Yeah. So we built a Left 4 Dead in VR chat, and that was the first time that I really made something. But it was also the first time I saw the true limitations of VR chat, and I ran into so many, of like the development challenges and issues. And coming out of that project, I was much better at understanding the limitations and much better at developing for VR chat.
Oh. Well, during the project, you found some limitations stuff. Mass, what at the time did you learn that was different from what the kind of projects you would normally work on in that project?
The resources are up to a developer to like, hey, let's dedicate 20% of CPU to this because we want to. We want it to be high fidelity or whatever. In VR chat, you don't really get that. You don't really get control over that stuff. There is a limitation to how far you can push Udon before it just falls over. That was one part of it. So it was like optimizing code was a big thing, and I learned a bunch from that, especially in Udon. But the other big one was actually the networking of VR chat, and I went through like 5 iterations of the netcode for that project, all of them terrible, and I do a better job today. But it was good to not just keep doing the same thing, but learn something new and try and push the boundaries.
Oh, okay. So you mentioned that you worked on VRCon. How much longer after that VRU project did that happen, and what happened in between between then and you joining?
It might have been around the same time. There was some meetings where I'd show up to VRCon quite tired, and that was mostly because I'd been programming, but it also
Mm.
was because I was working on that project. We released Shattered World before we released VRCon, so it ended up being a project that took this long, and then from there we then finished VRCon because Castle was also a part of VRCon. We tended to be like just everywhere together around that sort of time, and that was really cool. Yeah.
Oh, so how did you get involved with both projects between the one with Castle and VRCon? What got you like in the door with them and working on them?
There was actually people were asking in prefabs, oh, we need people that are willing to be unpaid and do work. And I went, I can be unpaid and do work, so I did that. VRCon was a really cool project, and the reason I did it was because the vision of it is to give back to the community, and that's something that I have tried to bring forwards with basis is following the same sort of principles.
Hmm. Okay, so how is working on something like VRCon different from like the Left 4 Dead project with the VRU?
VRCon was for the community almost, so that was communicating with potentially hundreds of the other communities on like a weekly basis. It was a lot of organization. There was also a lot of responsibility spread out across the team, and because of that, it was a it was we were all none of us are being paid, so it was like let's hope, cross your fingers that the person that we're not paying because no one's being paid to do their job does their job. And that was really hard. But with Shadow World, it was just me and Castle working on it.
Hmm. Okay. So based on some of the things you're saying so far, you're working on multiple projects at the same time. How do you stay organized with everything, Mask?
Didn't. It was the only reason that we got it done was because I had a lot of spare time and I could push things. I could be like, okay, we're gonna do both projects in one day. And the older I've gotten, my context switching has gotten harder and harder. And maybe that's just because I'm doing more and more, but it's getting harder to switch from like in-depth understanding of this to something else completely different. But I would say with VRCon and Shattered World, there wasn't too much difference in shifting scope. But what was building something for the community versus versus building a game, and that was the big two things that I had to like wrangle with. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you mentioned mentioning basis and some of the things you worked on as well. Where are you hoping that your projects will go, and how much work went into the startup of it?
I Where my projects will go, or
Yeah,
just where
where are
bases will
you
go?
hoping basis will go, Mask, and how much went into getting it
Yeah.
started?
Yep. Um, a lot of effort, but when you're building something that you're just using, it's easy. But then as soon as the community start using it as well, then now you've got to deal with support,
Mm.
and you got to deal with having documentation. You got to deal with community politics. You got to deal with all these other things that are not the coding. So when I started out, it was just me behind my computer whacking a few numbers together. Now we're no longer at that point, and we're like talking about what is the philosophy going into the future. What does the community want to see, and managing all those goals that are not my own. So how do building a roadmap and being like, how do you let the community drive the effort? At the end of the day, this is for them, so we should be developing it for them.
Mm. Was that something you expected going into the project for basis?
Did I expect that? I did in a way. I wasn't expecting it to be this large already, and I'm very thankful to everyone that's had a talk with me, has opened the project, used the project, helped me. We got a lot of really solid people that are helping me behind the scenes, essentially stay sane, and I'm very thankful to them.
Hmm. Oh, so I have a bit of a question for those who are interested to use basis. If for those who are familiar with like Vrchat Unity and how to build avatars and worlds of that way, how different is it would be for developing for basis, and how would on that side of development for it?
The first thing you'll notice is that it's you own everything. There isn't a corporation that you're deploying stuff to. This is yours. You own it. And with that comes responsibilities like people finding out, oh, I got to put this on Steam. Oh, I got to pay money to put it on Steam. So like all of a sudden you go from being able to let them do the work to, oh, now there's some downsides to this, which is that I am responsible. But when it comes to the project setup, beyond like the legal and stuff, it's what's really cool is you grab the Unity project, you open it up, you can put your stuff, you put your avatar in it, you can build the worlds in it, you can slap on third-party code that you normally can't. So if you ever wanted to try some like fancy concept, that's the place to do it because you're not limited by whatever social VR, other pre-made frameworks or applications, what they're limited to. You have full source code access, and it already has the social VR experience.
Hmm. So a question I have as well is how good is Unity with VR, social VR, and running VR as a game engine, Mask?
Well, most. Okay. So VR over the years, there's only been really one company that's properly supported it in an engine, and that is Unity. And that is why there's so many game devs here, that are in VR on Unity. It looks the best, with the most optimizations and a bunch of other stuff. There's a lot of core features that most other engines are still lacking, and I'm looking forward to them improving. Um, but that's the big thing is that Unity have put a lot of time and money into developing VR, and VR chat's built on Unity. All pretty much all the other ones are, and if they're not, they're on their own engine, and they can tell you themselves how much work that is to do. Yeah.
Mm, okay. So let's say you have a developer or a user who wants to use Basis to make a project, and they accepted they got to pay money in Steam. With using and uploading something to Basis, how different is that from what most Vrchat developers would experience in terms of like building and uploading to Basis? What are the steps to it?
So you grab the Unity project, you throw in Basis. From there, it gets really easy. We have same sort of UI setups where you can just add like a avatar SDK or avatar panel. What is it called? What do we call it? I think it's just avatar. Basis Avatar. That's literally what it's called. And it literally is the equivalent of VR chat's avatar component that you add. And then we have documentation as well that Townie and the other people in the community have put together. Very thankful for that. That you can step through, but it is not that different, and that's kind of intentional. Our goal is to make it where you can port things, or you can come from somewhere else in this space, and still be able to understand and use it.
Oh, so how much coding goes into building the UI and optimization process for those building for Basis Mask? Is that something that just comes naturally, or does it take some work to get that set up?
Are we talking UI in game? We talking
Or
editor panels? Are we talking?
from like we're still like in the like building of a Basis project, but all of the above just
Yeah.
to make things difficult.
I'm not good with multi questions.
We'll just start with like the development of a project, and we'll work our way through the rest of the ins and outs.
Yeah, sure thing. So building a project for Basis is pretty simple. If when you learn something like VR chat, world uploading, or avatar creation, a large chunk of that you're actually learning Unity, and that's why we as game devs tend to uh, shit on our own engine, is because we understand the problems. Anyway, so once you've learnt Unity, and through even the limited experience you've had with VR chat and all the other things, from there, Basis isn't that hard, because we do a lot. We try to simplify it and make it as minimal clicks as possible to do a lot of stuff. It's not hard. That's the one thing I can say, is we've worked a lot on that, and there's still more to do. But the goal is that if you're uploading avatars and you're uploading worlds, it's not going to be a massive step to try out Basis and add your own content to it. When it comes to things like UI, it's a component that you add on a UI component, just like you do with most other social stuff, and you set it up. It's not hard. That is something we've worked hard on.
Now, on that same question, but from a development from you process, how much code goes into setting up such an easy and smooth experience for the user?
Way too much. It's upsetting some days. Yeah, when you only have so many hours in a day, what is most important is making it so the other people understand and can use what you're creating, right? Because my goal is not to develop basis for myself, it's to develop it for the wider community. So that's a very hard thing to get right. Yeah, but so it's a lot of code that's been written to do that stuff. But that's how it should be. It should be me doing the hard lifting so you can fly.
Mm. So, what has been motivating you through Basis in terms of like with all the work? You did mention before building something greater to push VR. What keeps you driven to continue?
Very good question. I think the fact that social VR has given me so much, and I think that I can contribute to social VR in a way that is substantial. And some of the other things that we're working on that I get passionate out of is also being able to go to open source platforms, frameworks, and rally under some level of a banner that then we can go to companies, corporations, and be like, "Hey, we want these things added," and being able to do that as a group, I think that's really cool. Being able to improve our situation in VR, by doing this, and that's something that it doesn't get me up in the morning, but it's definitely one of the reasons that sometimes I get up in the morning.
Oh, well, I do appreciate you going over all of this with me. I'm sure seeing the insights of what goes behind building an engine or a framework such as Basis or any of this VR experiences, I'm sure a lot of us users kind of forget has a lot of work behind it that makes the magic happen other than just blip blop, click a button. There we go.
Ever show your VR e-girl crush your new world, and she says it's small and underperforms, just like your dick? Well, don't worry. With us, the only size that matters is how big your shopping cart can be. At Hash Studios, we've got Vrchat prefabs for any of your big world developer needs. Security cameras so you can spy on your enemies, megaphones so everyone can hear you flex across the map, and a passcode door to keep that bitch e-girl out. Buy our products for your needs today on Gumroad Booth, Jinxie Payhip, or your local drugstore. I think are responsible for broken hearts or broken frames.
Yeah, legitimately. One thing I can say, the VR chat devs tend to get a lot of crap from people that just want everything to be perfect. And the honest truth is, a lot of those people that are behind VR chat have put a lot of time and effort into it, and trying to do that with a much smaller team, to a degree of just social VR is still extremely tough. And we have a lot a lot of I got a lot of admiration for the developers behind VRChat, for example, because they've pushed the industry to where it is, and hopefully I'm able to help improve and help be the flip to their coin when it comes to pushing the industry forwards as well.
I will say having something similar to what people here in VR are used to develop their own games and stuff, I'm sure will help a lot, especially since I think last couple of years, other than VR chat, it seems kind of stale in terms of like VR game development anyway. So it'd be cool to see the community build stuff from your project with Basis.
Yeah, and we're also noticing with social VR, a lot of the other corporations pop up and try to be VR chat, and then they fail. And that's because right now there can only really be one top dog, and it's also an extremely unprofitable business model. And with Basis, you can experiment, and that's the big thing: is you get to experiment. You're not so limited. So thank you.
No problem. So once you started developing Basis, and even as you mentioned, you hopped into VR chat, it seemed like the way you view game development has changed a bit. How has working on Basis changed development from your eyes and perspective?
We talking development since when it started? Are we talking development as a process of my mental model? Which one?
Yes. Yes. I'm no help. Well, what I mean is like when you're like working on a project, let's say as you mentioned, when you first hopped into VRChat and you started the social aspect, it sounded like a lot of what you do for within your work and building and creativity kind of changed a little bit. And then when you're still working on other projects like Basis, has your perspective on like building and creating changed at all? You also mentioned you had said admiration for VRChat as well. Does that come from like the Basis work?
My admiration, my VR chat's always had a very nice place in my heart. I know a lot of the devs, and I also know the pain of building something like this and understanding what goes into it. So that's where my admiration comes from. Man, that's a weird word. uh, so that's part of that, and then when it comes to my own journey with Basis, the big thing I'll point out is just the fact that I've gone from being very solo to now I'm trying to build for the community. And when you're doing that, you're going from developing it for yourself to developing it for other people, and all the pain that comes with that, and understanding and putting the time and effort in to listen. My younger self didn't like to listen. My older self loves to listen.
So may I ask, as you said, you went from developing solo to listening to community. How different is the process for both in terms of like building something?
When you're solo, you can move through things quite quickly. And the best way of doing something doesn't matter as much as just what you want to do. When you start developing for the other people, you want to do right by them. And the only way to do right by them is understanding their needs, goals, wants, all the parts that come along with that. And building bases is very much a listen, react, but also understand. And that's been a process, and we do that weekly. So we have weekly tests where people come on basis and try out all the new stuff, and then most of the time tell me how wrong I did something, and then tell me how I should do it better. And that is amazing. The fact people are willing to take the time out of their day, out of their life to help improve basis tells me that I'm onto something.
I'm sure it's I'm sure it's quite interesting that you're willing to listen to people like that, because I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who'll take criticism like that, like, oh, this is wrong, that is wrong, and take it kind of personally. I'm sure that's been a hard thing to do. I'm sure the project you spent so much love on.
Yeah. If I was younger, I would have probably got upset about that, but realizing that was probably the one big thing. Going from being just a game dev to a senior, the difference between those two is just listening, being mature in your actions. Don't ever underestimate, the power of listening, and the power of just letting someone else listening to other people, understanding why they're saying the things they are. That is what allows you to actually take something to completion.
Cool. So what have been some of the things people have brought forth to you that that you implemented or surprised you at the time?
I was informed my full body sucked. They were absolutely correct. It's already better. There's still issues. I was recently we've been dealing with implementations of like, how do I place a hand here? And being like, oh, you should do it this way. It's half the amount of work and code, and it runs better. It's like, oh wow, I should do that. And having the ability to not be like, oh, my way is better, but at least investigate it and see if they're, trust but verify is a real thing. And when you're doing a project like this, there needs to be a lot of trust put in the community to give you the right things you need to go forwards.
So when you're listening to a bunch of people say some things they'd like to see change, or maybe even things they liked, how do you sift through what's important and not important to your development?
Well, what might not be important to me might be very important to them. So we tend to have we have an issues page on GitHub, which has all of the current things that are of issue. And then what we do every week when I go to the tests, I go, what should I work on next? And I may not say that out loud, but I listen to what needs to be done next. I listen to the people that are developing the app, and I ask them, what are the features you're missing? And then if there's enough consensus there, I prioritize that. And it's very easy to max out my week with everything that gets that people ask for. Social VR, is our digital soul essentially. So you want all of the things that you want all the things to work really well, and you need it to be very intimate with people, and that is a large amount of work. And it's an undertaking that can take, it doesn't, no, it definitely will. It'll take number of years to get right.
Hmm. Well, honestly, even from like watching from my perspective, from like when I hopped in a VR headset, kind of seeing things, it seemed like things have been developing quite quickly. Even from now, things like bases sprouting out. It's honestly kind of amazing to see it grow in that kind of fashion, especially people like you and the Vrchat team, and even a whole bunch of other people out there that are working on things. I'm gonna be honest. Thank you, you guys, all of you, even you watching, for doing what you're doing. I enjoy watching the growth.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I feel it. I think any dev that works in this industry for the right reasons, puts in a lot of time and effort and understands the impact it has on people's lives. And it's only because of the community that has fostered around VR that most of us are still here in this industry.
Hmm. Okay. So, what were some of the first events you've done in Basis, may I ask? Because I know there are a couple of people doing stuff inside of Basis. What were some of the first ones, or the ones you've enjoyed seeing so far?
So the basis is a framework. So the social events that we hold are very like, yo guys, all show up and let's spawn 1,000 pickups. We've done that. That was fun. Or how many people can we put in a single instance? Well, we're asking very fundamental questions that will then allow people that are less tech savvy to be able to be like, oh, I want 240 people in a lobby. That's possible. We've tested that. It doesn't work great at 240, but it definitely works well at 200. And so people are able to ask me like, oh, can it do this, this, and this? And then the test, so what that is for is to try those things. Now, what social events have been run with basis, like as a framework, the one big one is the VRU, and that wouldn't be possible without basis. So that's something that I'm proud of. And it's really cool to see bases out in the wild. It's when it is deployed out in the wild and I show up to an event, I don't feel like it's basis because even though I've written all the code, that's mostly, most of the code that's in there, it feels foreign. And that's a weird feeling, but that's also a good feeling. And I'm very thankful that people are taking the time to actually develop a basis.
Hmm. May I ask, on that feeling when you join an event with someone who used your framework, what is it like for you seeing a project flourish from something you worked on as well?
A lot of stress to begin with, and then like, hey, that happened this week, and it definitely is a motivation to do things better, to improve, reflect, and also communicate. When people put their trust in me and basis, that's something that I can't just take lightly, and I need to continuously work to allow that situation to continue. that is something, that I get out of it. But look, everything comes with stress in life, right? And basis is definitely my biggest stress, but it's also my biggest reward.
I'm sure especially some of the greatest rewards is working on something really hard, then stopping, looking back, and seeing how far you've gone on the journey. At least I think so anyway.
Yes, yeah, I totally agree. And the hard thing is being able to see the things that I have done. Burnout happens when you don't think what you've been working on is worth it anymore. And that can be, from lack of spending not enough time doing other things, or putting way too much time into something, or even being like, oh, I built this thing and it wasn't useful. But I haven't. I've tried to manage it so that way. Basis has been a continuously I want to work on going forwards and will not lead to burnout. Yeah, I get told by the community all the time, don't push yourself too much, and I'm very thankful for that.
How do you deal with burnout, may I ask?
The big thing is knowing when to stop. Because if you get to the point where you're burning out, that means something before that has gone wrong. So knowing when to take breaks. Even a few years ago, I really failed at that, and it's only in the last year or two. And maybe it's just a thing where you get old enough, you know your boundaries better. And I would say it's that, but being able to know, like, oh, I should take time to go spend time with friends, and I should go play games with friends, and being like that is not a that's not a negative impact on my time. It's a relaxation and recovery from working. Humans are made to work. Yes, they're not made to work all day, every day.
Well, thank you very much for that insight. It's much appreciated. I'm sure something I see a lot in people who are around the VR space anyways. People tend to get very motivated and then run themselves into the dirt. You see it time and time again. People who develop worlds and avatars, people who DJ, club events, and community owners. So I do appreciate hearing it from you. Thank you.
Share it. I think every person struggles with it, and knowing where your limits are is really important. And not even where your limits are, but just live life. Live life normally. Go spend time with friends. You're not always going to be there.
So I'm going to ask another question on something you mentioned earlier, and some of the things you've tested when you would have test in basis, which is, like, for example, having 240 people in an instance. That sounds very... What goes behind having like that many people in an instance, or even what is the factors between how many people can be in an instance?
So first thing for 240, it was only like 40 real people. And then what we would do is every person would open another client on their machine. So essentially they're now in two different places, right? And then we would keep asking them to open more and more and more clients. And the goal with those tests was to see how far bases could go and where our limitations were. And then every week I would then improve on, hey, here's the next thing we hit, like this hard limit. We can't go any further. And then I would take it, back into the tool shed, work on it a bunch, and then try it again next week. And that was a really good process. Now that was the motivation behind that process was for DJ events, for large scale role play events, being able to just, for $50 a month, you put it up you put it up on a little server somewhere, and so okay, I'll start at the beginning. You put the basis server up on a private server, you put it on your computer and run it, and then you have people connect to it just like game servers, and from there you can host events with it. And the two big things I was focusing on were role play, so being able to have high performance interactions with many, many people. And the other one, which is DJ events, being able to exist in one smaller space where a DJ is playing, right? And how do you do that? What are the optimizations behind that? And that's what that time was used for. Yeah, I hope that answers some part of that question.
Well, it answered quite a lot. In fact, what are the limitations to having that many people in? Because one of the things like you hear all the time within the social VR space is, I wish I could have more people. And I'm just kind of curious, what kinds of things kind of cause the limits of like 240 or even 80 here in this instance? What kinds of things are in that like back of house server that people aren't seeing?
Nothing's free. Most people that use Vrchat, for example, don't pay. So investors are paying for this, and servers are very expensive. And that's why when I built Base's server, it's designed to run very light and very core, very low level. And by low level, I'm more talking not so much like it runs on C, just more like very primitive stuff where it's here's our data, send it over the network to your computer. And Vrchat does a lot of optimizations, and we do a lot of optimizations. And one of the big ones that we both share is a server reduction system. So I don't know, some people may have noticed when you go to a certain distance away from the other players in Vrchat, they'll slow down, like their movement will slow down. And that's actually a reduction. Now, when you do systems like that, you can only go so far before that reduction still hits your bottleneck, which the bottleneck will actually be your upload and download speeds and the ability, like the actual horsepower behind being able to deliver that content. And 80 people is a really good amount because it's like been optimized by Vrchat where you're not going to notice too much of a reduction in service, and that's great. And you get that for free, and that's amazing. That they allow that. Yeah.
Now with Basis, what were some of the limitations that caused you to stop at 240?
Time and effort. The more that you continue up that path to higher player counts, the more time and effort to debug things, and the harder it is to do. I've done tests further than 240, but but why go past 240 right now? What is the reason? And I haven't got a good reason to yet, so I haven't put the time in it. There's much more important things I've been working on. Basis is designed to scale really well, and I do not know where its technical limits are, but I'll find out. But we will find out in the months and years to come.
With everything you've described, I'm sure the lines of code that makes all of this magic and Basis run has got to be one massive long page.
You would think that, but it's not.
Really?
It's a lot of little yeah. So when you write code, you tend to try and write things where it's like, oh, this block of code does this function, right? So it opens a web page or it accesses a bit of memory or sets your name on your nameplate, right? All those things. It's basic, but then you just stack a bunch of those really basic things together, and then you build an architecture where it's like this comes from A and it goes to B. It's not rocket science, but when you write code, you need to make sure you take the time to write it cleanly, so that is a human can read it. And the other one is that you need to be able to profile it. And that's the biggest thing. A lot of programmers, when they start, they don't profile. And profiling is really important. So the fact that we knew how to get the 240 was because we both architectured it, could read it, but we could also profile it and understand, hey, we need to improve these sections because those are our current bottlenecks.
Hmm. Okay. So for the average VR user who isn't at your seat or any other developer's seat, what kinds of things do you wish the community would know or understand, may I ask?
That it exists. That's the big one. You know, if you ever want to take your VR chat world, if you ever want to take content from somewhere else, if you ever wanted to build your own social platform or use it for a social interaction, if you've ever wanted to do those things, or even just build an FPS shooter in basis, you can do that. We do the hard lifting for you, so you don't have to. And I'm now in the stages where I'm opening up to sharing this more publicly with people outside of just game devs. And that's been a really good experience. And I want people to know that.
Hmm. So what will it take for you to be a fully public, may I ask? What kinds of things are you hoping to achieve before doing that?
Mostly further improvements to documentation, further improvements to full body IK, further improvements to everything. But that's not how the world works, right? So it'll just be general improvements. And when the community thinks that we're at the next stage, then I'll go more publicly with it. My goal is to get developers in using it and then continuously, widen the net. There will be a limit to how far we can widen that net with like the people that we would like to use it. If you've got no experience in Unity, that's probably outside of the scope of basis. But there's a lot of people that know how to open the editor.
Okay. So also question is, in all of this development for all of this, what has been some of the harder things that you've come to like work on or build through, and how did you overcome that obstacle?
I've mentioned it already in this conversation. That's because it is a pain in the ass, and that is full body IK.
Mm.
Full body IK is a high requirement of mathematics to understand joints, positioning, three bone, but how do you move? I'll put it this way: how do you move joints where you don't know where the joint is? How do you estimate? How do you do that stuff? That is all time consuming and extremely hard to understand because we're essentially trying to replicate a human skeleton, and nothing about our IRL bodies is easy to understand.
Cool. So how does like and for the person who doesn't know what you mean by high mathematics, what makes the IK and full body work in terms of like the back of house stuff? Because I'm quite interested. Hello, I'm actually here to interrupt the episode you're watching really quick to ask you a favor. Please come join us at any of the other locations we have. You can find us on YouTube and Spotify, both of which we post our episodes and are very up to date on both. We have Discord where you go to hang out all the time, where you're gaming and shooting the breeze over with many people over that way. Feel free to come join us. I invite you. If you wish to support us, we have a Patreon where we post a bunch of random bits, bobs, and extra podcast every once in a while for you to go enjoy. Also, if you wish to support us while in Vrchat, we're now part of the creator economy, so please come join if you wish to support us there. It's there for you to choose if you so wish. And thank you very much, and a special thanks to some of the people who have signed up on our Patreon, which are as follows, and I have written down so I'll remember, and that's a tough thing. Forbidden Zero, Niche, Aliquum, Future Oracle, Lesser Capybara, and Frozen. Thank you all very much. Enjoy the rest of the episode.
So we got lucky. So Final IK is what VR Chats was based on. I don't think it is anymore. I think they've done their own thing now. They tend to be they've hired the right people. But with Basis, we use animation rigging, which is a package that Unity has created that's done a lot of the hard lifting for us. But then what we have to do is now we know where to place this joint, but we don't know what the human body looks like. So we've got to create a physical mapping between the digital our digital self and our real self. So we got to do the calibration system where it is able to understand, hey, this tracker is this distance and this rotation away from my hand. So we got to map it. You got to do some inverse sets and a bunch of other stuff, and then move parts. And there's also the other things like in here. I don't know how well it's showing, but Vrchat makes sure not to clip arms into the other parts of your body, and that's very important. Stuff like that you as a consumer will never notice because it's done so well, and that's the hard part is making it invisible.
So how did you, like, if this is so hard to try and do, how did you learn to adapt and build for full body and IK stuff mask? How did you
By
achieve?
lots of failing. Lots of failing. Full body IK has been probably the most difficult thing that I've done in a while. It requires a level of understanding that you can't just, you can't just Google it. You can. Like, there are resources out there, but this stuff is so, it's so involved. And not only is it so involved, but you can make something that works for you and your avatar, but then you put it in someone else's hands and they're a different shape. They have a different avatar, and so how do you build something that is agnostic to both the user and the content they're wearing? That is extremely hard.
I can only imagine, especially with the various types of trackers that are out there as well, on top of it.
Yeah, that's not as difficult.
Okay.
And the reason for that is companies want you to use their trackers, right? So they give you an SDK of sorts, or they give you how to actually get that data. But then taking that data and turning it into something that represents yourself. Like, how do you take a bunch of points in space and then that becomes your avatar? Like, that is like hundreds of steps, right, to get from there to there. And that's the difficult part.
I can only imagine. Thank you for explaining like how all of that works and everything, because I'm sure it's not something I've ever had the liberty of hearing. So it kind of builds a repertoire of knowing how the magic of what we all enjoy works.
Yeah, and it's extremely important. People don't give enough credit to the people that made that stuff. It's when something works really well, no one talks about it because it's just, oh yeah, it's perfect.
Oh.
One second, my menu opened and now I can't close it.
Oh, like on your hands?
Thanks, Valve.
Or the
no, like, yeah. Yeah, it's just opened and now there is no close button.
The Steam menu. Go to on the bottom there should be a little icon that shows Vrchat. Click that and then resume. There's no like close
and then return the game.
Yeah, let's
do that. But I see what's happened. I think one of my controllers is, hey, joys of game dev. We're good. I'm not gonna press, like, I didn't press that, it just opened. I'm putting my I'll see if I can get there we go, hand tracking. What the wonders of hand tracking. There we go. It won't do it now.
Oh, so have you played with hand tracking within Basis as well, like the whole quest hand magic?
Yep. Stuff is really cool, really finicky, and is extremely tiny in let me just see if I can get, so to get fingers to be in the correct position is extremely hard. You've got to get the data out of Oculus SDK, Meta's stuff, get it out of OpenXR, out of SteamVR. You got to get that data, you got to make sure that it all comes in. So you got to convert it into like a very similar format that you can use, and then you've got to do the same thing as IK, where there's a mapping. How do you map fingers that are twice as long as your IRL ones, or how do you map fingers that have weird shapes? Well, we have bones behind that, right? So it's like the skeleton structure, but then we still got to map them because the skeleton's a different proportion to your IRL hand, and getting that math correct is really hard in that calibration phase where we go, hey, it's this much offset, and here's all the positions it can be, and let's lerp between them. That's a hard thing to understand.
I can only imagine. Now, with all of this IK and, for example, the Quest hand magic and stuff, did you have any knowledge or work with that prior to Basis, or was Basis the first time you've worked on anything like this?
This is my third or fourth attempt at a lot of these concepts. I think I'll need a fourth attempt before I probably get it. But then I'll say that when I get to like the 20th attempt. But anyway, this stuff is so hard to get right, and to do it right requires lots of time and effort. Yeah, there's always improvements you can make. It's just at what point can people no longer tell?
Oh, well, I'm sure for no matter how far down the path of VR immersion we'll get, people will always be upset about something. So the fact that we're here in an avatar, moving your hands and body is still techno magic to me.
and it should be considered that this stuff is extremely hard to do, and there's a reason. There are a reason companies have half body where they don't even have legs. It's because they're complex, and all the other things that also come with that I won't get into. But yeah, writing VR code is difficult because you're not writing the rules of the world. The rules of the world from your it's the other way around, where the user, how they want to use it is what kind of dictates the what you're actually writing. You're not building an ARPG. You're not building an FPS. You're building something where a human exists in a 3D space, and they can pick up a gun. They can, pick up an item. They can throw something. And when a user picks up something and they can't throw it, well, then you're at fault, because that's implied that that's how that's going to work by our IRL. Way of thinking.
Oh, so developing for VR game or social VR is different from what would be traditional gaming. Then, with that said, you're not like building the rules, as you said. The world is the rules to the user, if I'm understanding this correct.
Yeah, it's when you're building a game in VR, you're setting the rules of engagement. But most importantly, the user already knows how to do everything, When we throw up a UI panel and the other stuff, that stuff gets in the way. But being able to be like, oh, there's a game object, I can pick it up with my hands, that is something they already know how to do. And that is the big difference. And it's also one of the reasons why people get it wrong so much.
Oh, so what has been the most rewarding thing in this project so far, may I ask, with like building Basis in this project?
I'll give you two examples, or two different points of view. The first one is getting to such a large scale amount of people with high frame rates, but also having the level of interactability with the avatar that we're used to. That's really cool, and everything surrounding that. How many technologies are all coming together to present that outcome is crazy. But on the other hand, what's really nice to see is when the community understand it, they get it, they're involved, they're happy, they're showing up to the meetings and being like, Dulie, you're doing a good job. I really enjoy that feedback that I get from that. And I really enjoy being my own boss, and I enjoy listening to the community. I enjoy hearing about people's passion and what they want to do with it, and that's really cool.
Hmm. Now, a question I ask a lot of people, and I'm kind of curious to hear yours, is when you first put on your first headset, did you expect this journey you're on now at all? Or was this whole thing like one big blindside?
I should have been making FPS games. I'm not doing that. So yes, very massive, very different. Very different. Like if you would ask my younger game dev self, would I would be like, oh yeah, I'll get into VR. That'd be really cool. Did I think it was going to become my career? No, I don't think most people do.
Hmm. Are you happy you've made this change?
That's a good question. Am I happy? Yes. Am I happy that I made the change into VR? Yes. Some days people, I look back and I'm like, well, who could I have turned out as? But I don't really feel. I feel like this has been a really okay with everything I've done in my life. This is by far one of the most rewarding and enjoyable processes. Getting really good at something, and yeah,
Mm.
it's an amazing journey.
Mm. I know it's a bit of a weird question, but I enjoy asking that because something I hear a lot when talking with people is whenever the moment people put on the plastic potato that they wear on their face to bring them to this magical land, it always comes with something that changes them in some way. And a lot of times it's for the better. Like they go on a journey, they put on a headset, maybe they go to the Black Hat, maybe they're playing Half-Life Alyx or whatnot. But as the journey progresses, where they wanted to be when they came in is very different versus where they ended up. Somebody came in as to be a normal user to look in a Black Cat mirror and forget life exists, and now they're DJing in California with another rave group or something of that nature.
Yeah. Vrchat's got a lot of experiences that can open your eyes to all kinds of stuff, and VR can be used for so much good.
Mm. Oh, well, thank you for even explaining everything so far, man. I'm gonna be honest; it has opened my eyes to quite a lot of stuff I didn't know prior. So thank you.
More than welcome.
Oh, oh. Well, I'll ask this as well. What is something you actually? Where do you hope basis will go in terms of like when will start slowing down? Development, anyway.
Not slowing down. What do you mean by slowing down?
Not losing sleep.
At some point I do want to start my own family, and I am getting married, and I need to make sure I have time for my fiance. But that's with balance. Everything's balance in life. And right now I'm able to go pretty hard. But in 2 months' time, I'm not going to be able to go as hard. And that's okay. Basis has already got enough momentum now where it is on its own continuing and barreling down a path that is really cool. And it's really, pushing boundaries, and people are able to use it and they're happy with using it. So I don't see a point where it'll slow down, but I definitely will. Age gets us all. It's just a matter of when.
Fair. Now, I want to ask last couple questions before we start wrapping this up a little bit. First of which is the name you use in Vrchat. Where did you get it, and why do you still use it?
Dulie. It might have been one of my passwords when I was younger.
Ah.
So when I was young, so it's a play on my last name, and when I was young, I was in IT class, and the person in charge, probably not the best safety expert when it comes to stuff. Maybe I shouldn't have used my last name, and that was an okay thing to do back then, as as a part of my password. But I ended up reusing it as my username. So that's where Dulie comes from. And I've had that nickname for a long time, and there's other people in my family that have very similar, like play on this word, or Dulie name. So that was. And what was the other question?
Oh, why do you still use it?
Why do I still use it? It's definitely stuck with me. I think it's an approachable name. People aren't upset. Um, I get called Dewey the dinosaur a bit. That one's funny. I don't know if you know that one. But it's a little dinosaur figure. That's called Dulie, and that sometimes comes up.
Oh. And the last question is the avatar you're in. Why did you choose it, and why do you still use it? Is there anything about it that means anything to you?
So my fiance is an avatar creator, and this is a base that's been modified. I think it's Winterpool avatar. But yeah, so my fiance does a lot of 3D modeling and texturing and stuff, and she also worked on VRCon and all the other projects that I've also talked about a lot. But yeah, so that's why I wear it. We have matching avatars because she's an avatar creator. Hey, joys of life.
Well, again, congratulations on your fiance, and I wish you two the absolute best of luck. And thank you for explaining where your name and avatar comes from. One thing I found in VR, how you present yourself, a lot of people put a lot of thought into it, so it's kind of interesting to see why people make those choices.
Yes, the digital soul is very important, and when you represent more of it, it builds it builds a very good understanding of who you are, and you're able to share that with people, and it's really cool. Yeah.
Well, if the audience wishes to reach out or find you, basis or any of your projects, where can they go to find you?
Basis. I think it's Basis VR. Is If you search that, it'll come up on Google. We're on Twitter. We're on Blue Sky, GitHub, Discord, a bunch of other places. But if you're after me, you can just get me at Dulie on Discord. I was lucky to get to get Dulie. Yeah, so it's an easy one to reach out to.
Oh, and we'll have all those links for you to find and click over in the episode description. If you scroll down a little bit from the video, you'll see description, hit show more, and then you'll see guest links. Everything will be there. And if you're on Spotify, it's over in the episode description in the same place, guest links. And this is, we're going to ask you, the audience, a question. I always enjoy seeing your comments on this is, what is a social VR interaction that has stuck with you? One of mine that stuck with me is when I met Rapture a long time ago. A friend of mine, actually one of the initial founders of Metaverse Degen, you're watching this now, told me, I have this friend, a really old guy I think you'll be really best friends with. And we've been stuck since our first conversation, talk about the cursed content of yesteryear with videos that probably shouldn't be named on the internet anymore, but we've been best friends since. I'd like to hear all your interactions and read all your comments. Thank you very much for everything, and we'll see you over in the Metaverse, folks. Have a good one.
Meow. 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 This is not as easy as it looks without making it. Meow. Meow. Beep beep. Mom, I forgot to get my flyer license. Yeah. My helicopter's in the ditch. Whoa, big hole. Whoa. Beep beep.